Hey review family, keep it high, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, a review guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one I'm going to be covering the Split album by Primitive Man and Hell. So this is a short collaborative split EP by American bands Primitive Man and Hell. And this is a little bit of an exception, and I was bouncing it around in my head if I was going to do this or not, because this EP actually released back in February. So I'm a little late to the party, but I went ahead and listened to this EP, and I couldn't not talk about this. And to be frank, I think this actually passed by a lot of people's ears in general as well, because I'm part of some groups that will talk about music like this, and I didn't hear this brought up when it came out. If you're unfamiliar with either of the bands, just really quick, I'll catch you up. Primitive Man is a doom metal band that incorporates black metal, that incorporates noise and death metal, all into this like painful, sludgy sound, and Hell is more of a kind of cut and dry doom metal slash sludge metal band, leaning more towards the extreme side of things. And one thing about Primitive Man is they have been known to do quite a few splits. They've done it with quite a few bands, very extensive. I might put it up here on the screen somewhere. But one of the things that made me want to check this album out immediately when I heard it had come out is the fact that Primitive Man released one of my favorite doom metal albums of the decade, and honestly one of my favorite doom metal albums in general, that being their 2017 album Caustic. This album is just like a blunt blow to the head. It is so long, but it's not long-winded. It reaches up into I think over an hour's worth of material. It's been a little bit since I've listened to it, but it's one of the most massive albums to come out of the genre this decade, especially in the latter half at least, and I highly suggest it. 100%. I highly suggest it. And I would even say that it's a nice gateway, a nice segue for people that don't usually like doom metal, but do like extreme metal genres such as the black metal. Kind of get a nice flavor for doom metal with a little bit more hybrid thrown in, a little bit more kind of experimentation, a wider pool of influence. If this was just a sucky EP, I wasn't going to cover it, but this stopped me in my tracks, even though it's only 3 tracks in 22 minutes. Primitive Man takes up the first 2 tracks and Hell takes up the last track, but something I gotta say right away is I do feel like Hell probably had a little bit of input on the first 2 tracks. I wasn't able to find out exactly if there was some instrumentation done by the solo project known as Hell, but the doomy elements, the very just distorted, sludgy, slower parts of the first 2 tracks that Primitive Man take the whole of sound a lot like something Hell would do. It's a little bit slower than what I necessarily expect from Primitive Man, and that's saying something because they always play it very down-tuned, very heavy, very low, very distorted, and extremely doomy. It just seems a little bit less. Now look, I want to turn this EP on to as many people as possible, so in case you are clicking off the video eventually during this, I'll just come out and say it. If you click off, that's fine, but please check out this EP. You will not regret it. It is a flurry of pain straight from the first track, Oily Tears, where those guitars are they're so down-tuned. They're tuned to drop Beat Your Head In or something, and the drums are monstrous. The vocal performance, as always from Primitive Man, is just so destructive. It's a force to be reckoned with, and the bass plays this mode of just kind of a more distorted, grimy, disgusting guitar. The way this bass is mixed and distorted, it sounds so horrific on these tracks that Primitive Man take. The bass is a lot more audible and I guess kind of normal on the last track, which Hell takes over. On both of the tracks that Primitive Man take, they incorporate distortion, they incorporate some very noisy elements, which isn't anything kind of uncanny, and some of those faster drum passages where the speed does pick up the velocity just a little bit. It does remind me of some of the black metal influences they take into their sound, although I don't think they're as apparent here as some of the parts on Caustic. And there are some moments on this EP that just shatter my psyche from inside out, like on the track Oily Tears, the first one where it's leaving the 2-minute mark and going into the 3-minute mark, and you're getting this fast flurry of drums being played, and the guitars just sound like this such just devilish display of ferocity. Oily Tears and Pitiful and Loathsome, which are the Primitive Man tracks, take on a kind of feel that you might think is kind of Primitive Man 101, but I do think that there's very much more than meets the eye, and while they are rooted in kind of some minimalism when it comes to this genre, there's actually a lot going on. These are some very bustling, like, compositions for these two tracks, and I definitely employ just go and just look at these compositions, take a step back and look at all the things that are going on. It's so noisy, it's so abrasive, it's so caked in blood and guts, and it's just blood stained all to hell, but just try. Whereas both of Primitive Man's tracks get out before the 7-minute mark, Newman, the track that Hell covers, almost reaches up into the 10-minute mark. I believe it's 9 minutes and 55 seconds, and this is a lot more rooted in doom metal. I wouldn't say it's as musically diverse as Primitive Man can be at times. It's very just straightforward, just very murky, very kind of long doom metal. The bass being kind of one of the forefront leaders of the composition, and while the vocals are very kind of reverbed out and shrieked like you might get in some of the more extreme metal genres with doom metal incorporated in them, I would say that when the vocals kind of fade out is when this track really flourishes. It's where it's just this very long composition that reminds me something similar to a Bell Witch, where it really embraces minimalism in the way of atmosphere and the fade out. It goes on for minutes, and under other situations I might be like, this is long-winded, this isn't that good, this shouldn't go on that long. I like it here. So I'm kicking myself in the ass for not covering this before, because it really is a great EP, a great little split, and I highly suggest you check it out. I'm not sure how many people are actually going to get their hands on this review, but if you did stumble across this, if you are one of my subscribers, I highly suggest checking out this EP. Once again, angry I wasn't able to cover it before. It's a flurry of pain and anguish and agony, but like in the best way possible, and this isn't gonna like touch Caustic. I still think that is Primitive Man's just opus as of now, but it's still a great EP. I'm gonna be giving it an 8 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Please stay for the end screen. I'll link some videos that you might be interested in. Like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. It'll help me out a lot, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. I'll talk to you guys next time, but until then, my name is Jay Morse, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.